In the next-generation VR game known as Desperate Hellfire, players control avatars called demon gods, clashing with swords and magic, a brutal multiplayer battlefield where only the strongest can survive. But amidst the chaos of clashing steel and brilliant spells, there is one who mows down all enemies with his bare fists alone, a man known only by his overwhelming raw power. He was the undisputed #1 player, the Demon King, a legend who stood at the absolute peak of the game's rankings. His combat abilities were second to none, a true rival for the throne. But even against such a foe, the Demon King never backed down. The Demon King gathers his energy for a final desperate strike, but his opponent descends like a fiery comet, an unstoppable force. The dragon-like warrior closes in for the finishing blow. Onlookers can only watch in stunned silence. This rival was a true monster of the game, a being of immense power. He was a player feared by everyone in Desperate Hellfire, and with one final attack, the Demon King is defeated. But the world of the game is not the world of reality. Here, in an ordinary high school classroom, life goes on as usual. And the legendary Demon King is just a quiet student named Narumitsu. But his quiet life is suddenly interrupted as a shadow looms over his desk. A group of delinquents approaches, their leader complaining about a rough morning. The other students can only watch in nervous silence. This student, Kishimura Chiharu, is clearly looking for someone to take his anger out on, and Narumitsu's meek response makes him the perfect target. Kishimura suddenly lashes out, kicking the bag right out of Narumitsu's hands. His belongings spill across the classroom floor. Grabbing him by the collar, Kishimura rages at his victim's weak reaction. Narumitsu is thrown to the ground, cowering under the assault. The bullies look down on him, their leader still fuming about his own frustrations. One of the bullies grabs a bucket of water, and Kishimura demands it for himself. His friends can only whisper about how terrifying their leader is when he's angry. With a twisted smile, Kishimura hoists the bucket over Narumitsu, ready to relieve some stress. Narumitsu looks up in pure panic, trying to plead with him, but it's too late as a wave of cold water crashes down on him. Soaked and humiliated, his fist clenches tightly on the floor. He looks up, his eyes burning with despair, wondering why he's always the target. Kishimura misinterprets this look as defiance, angrily asking what he's staring at. The delinquents loom over our boy, enjoying his misery. Leaning in close, Kishimura smirks, promising that the torment is far from over. Thrown across the room, he can't even find the words to fight back. He can only grit his teeth against the wave of humiliation and pain. The other bullies hold him up, presenting him as a helpless target. Another one of the delinquents steps in to land a vicious blow with a smirk. The impact sends a shockwave of agony through his entire body. And once again, Narumitsu is left broken on the cold, hard floor. All he can do is endure the shame and the fresh bruises. Later, he walks home alone, convinced that his reality is a living hell. The physical and emotional wounds are a constant, throbbing reminder of his weakness. He finally reaches his apartment, the only sanctuary he has left in this world. He steps through the door, finally reaching his personal haven. A cheerful voice greets him from the living room, but the young woman's smile fades the moment she sees his face, her shock turning to panic as she asks what happened to him. Narumitsu puts on a brave face, insisting that he's fine and it's nothing to worry about. But his sister can only look on, her expression filled with unconvinced concern. Alone in his room, the weight of his reality crashes down on him. His eyes land on the VR headset sitting on his nightstand, his only escape. He grabs it with a desperate urgency, needing to log back into the game. Because in that world, his body moves exactly as he commands, free from the weakness of reality. He clenches his fist as the system begins logging him into Desperate Hellfire, a world where he wishes reality could be just the same. But as the headset activates, something feels terribly wrong. A sudden jolt of pain shoots through his head, blinding him. An error message flashes across his vision, a physical abnormality detected. He wonders if the dizziness is from the beating Kishimura gave him earlier. He finds himself floating in a strange digital void, his real-world injuries still present. He tries to speak but can't, overcome with the fear that this is the end. His mind flashes back to Kishimura's cruel, mocking face, and he's consumed by regret, wishing he'd had the strength to fight back. His final thought is a burning desire to make Kishimura and the others pay with his own two hands. And in that digital darkness, unseen entities confirm his identity and decide to begin a special treatment. Sometime later, the world fades back into view, showing the outside of a hospital. And with a sudden jolt, Narumitsu's eyes snap open. He finds himself sitting up in a hospital bed, completely disoriented. To his shock, he realizes he's not only alive, but feels no pain at all. His gaze falls upon a familiar bag sitting on a nearby chair. He recognizes it as his sister Yuko's bag, realizing she must have brought him here. Just then, a calm voice from the doorway announces that he's finally awake. A nurse enters the room, explaining that despite running tests, they found nothing seriously wrong with him beyond minor trauma. She informs him that he's well enough to be discharged the next morning, but Narumitsu knows that the blinding pain from the VR headset was anything but normal. The nurse simply leaves him to his thoughts, the medical mystery unsolved. The following afternoon, he forces himself to return to the last place he wants to be. He stands outside his classroom, bracing for the inevitable confrontation. The memory of his sister's tear-streaked face flashes through his mind, and the desperate hug she gave him, begging him to be safe. He decided to come in late, hoping to avoid his tormentors. But as he stands there, he can't shake the feeling that something is different. His thoughts are cut short as Kishimura and his crew appear, their smiles dripping with malice. Narumitsu freezes, the name of his tormentor escaping his lips. Kishimura smirks, announcing that he was bored without a target for his fists. The familiar dread begins to creep back in, paralyzing our boy. One of the lackeys steps forward to grab him, expecting no resistance. But to his utter shock, Narumitsu isn't where he's supposed to be. Our boy is just as stunned, having moved out of the way on pure instinct. The bully's embarrassment quickly boils over into pure rage. He screams at Narumitsu, furious that his victim dared to dodge. With a roar, the delinquent charges forward to teach him a lesson. But this time, Narumitsu doesn't cower. He meets the attack with a powerful fist to the jaw. He realizes with a jolt that he can see all of their movements. It's as if he's not just hitting them, but unleashing a storm of raw power. Another one of Kishimura's lackeys rushes in to attack, his face twisted with the intent to put Narumitsu back in his place. But our boy meets the charge with a devastating knee to the gut. He stands over his fallen tormentor, a strange new confidence radiating from him. Kishimura can only watch, his shock quickly turning into pure, unadulterated rage. Screaming his victim's name, the delinquent leader charges forward. But the boy who once cowered in fear now effortlessly ducks under the wild swing, and with a powerful kick, he sends his main tormentor flying across the hall. Kishimura can only scream in disbelief, unable to comprehend what just happened. He looks down at his former bully, a strange, powerful aura radiating from him. The remaining delinquents are frozen in absolute terror. To them, the boy they once tormented now looks like an unstoppable monster. His mind flashes back to the humiliation he suffered just the day before, the memory of the cold water crashing down on him. But back in the present, other students are helping the fallen bullies. Narumitsu watches them, the fiery rage in his eyes suddenly fading. He looks down at his own hands, wondering where this incredible strength came from. As the school day comes to an end, everything has changed. Back in the classroom, Narumitsu sits alone, lost in his own world. He replays the fight in his mind, remembering the feeling of defeating Kishimura. It was the exact same sensation he felt as the Demon King in the game. But the whole situation feels impossible, especially since he's never had good reflexes. He's never even been in a real fist fight, wondering if yesterday's headache is the cause. Could it be that he can now move with the power of his demon god avatar? He quickly dismisses the thought as something straight out of a comic book. For now, there's simply no logical explanation for what's happened. Meanwhile, Kishimura seethes with rage, vowing to make Narumitsu pay for the humiliation. His friends can only watch in terror, knowing their leader's fury is far from over. Kishimura is already back to his old ways, cornering two other students in the hallway. But his posturing is interrupted by a voice from behind, calling him pathetic. A much larger delinquent grabs him by the shoulder, a menacing grin on his face. Kishimura freezes in terror, unable to even form a proper sentence. He's immediately punished with a sharp blow to the stomach for his weakness. As he crumples to the ground, the blindfolded leader scolds him for making them look bad. He grabs Kishimura by the face, demanding to know who was responsible for his defeat. Barely able to speak, Kishimura finally gives up Narumitsu's name. The larger bully's smile widens as he decides to go and take care of this new problem. And so, the situation at the school is about to escalate even further. But his quiet reflection is interrupted by a classmate approaching his desk. Narumitsu looks up, completely caught off guard by the sudden attention. With a sparkling smile, she asks if he was the one who took down Kishimura. She excitedly reenacts the fight, throwing mock punches in the air. The girl explains that she just happened to witness the entire confrontation. It seems she's the only classmate who ever even noticed his suffering, a fact that leaves Narumitsu blushing and at a loss for words. And to his surprise, it's the most popular girl in their entire grade. She admits that until today, everyone was too afraid to stand up to the bullies. So watching him finally put them in their place was incredibly satisfying. Internally, Narumitsu is overjoyed that Momozaki is even speaking to him. But that happiness is quickly replaced by a wave of painful self-doubt. He can almost feel the judging stares of his classmates, believing he's not worthy of her time. He tries to brush off her praise, insisting that his victory was just a lucky accident. It then dawns on him that Kishimura and his crew never returned to class after their defeat. But Momozaki looks unconvinced, telling him it didn't look like a fluke to her at all. Flustered, Narumitsu tries to make his exit, but she suddenly offers to walk home with him. He's completely stunned by the offer, as she explains she wants to get to know him better. Narumitsu's mind races, telling himself that she's just being friendly and he shouldn't read into it. He clenches his fist, trying to stop himself from getting the wrong idea about her kindness. He follows her out of the classroom, his mind still a whirlwind of disbelief, because in his mind he's still the same weak kid from yesterday, the one who was always at the very bottom of the class. But Momozaki turns back with a bright smile, beckoning him to follow. Unable to refuse such genuine kindness, Narumitsu puts on a brave face. The two walk out of the school gates together, a sight no one could have predicted. For a brief moment, Narumitsu feels a sense of genuine happiness, but that feeling is cut short by the sight of a bruised and vengeful Kishimura. Narumitsu's joy instantly evaporates, replaced by the familiar sting of fear, and standing beside his old tormentor is a new threat, one who already knows what happened. The larger bully addresses Narumitsu directly, his voice dripping with contempt. Narumitsu recognizes him as the third year who runs all the delinquents in the school. He explains that when his underlings get beaten by someone like Narumitsu, it reflects poorly on him as their leader. He promises that Kishimura will be punished later, but first he has to return the favor to Narumitsu. With a terrifying promise of violence, the third-year leader throws a punch. The blow lands with brutal force, sending Narumitsu stumbling back. He crumples to the ground, the impact leaving him stunned. The bully scoffs at the lack of resistance, mocking his victim's weakness. He then winds up for another vicious strike, ready to continue the assault. The bully lifts Narumitsu by the collar, ready for another strike. He lands another brutal punch, taunting him for not even trying to fight back. But from the sidelines, another student watches intently, realizing he could see that last punch with perfect clarity. Narumitsu can only endure the blow, his face stinging from the impact. The third year scoffs, bored by the lack of a challenge as he leaves Narumitsu on the ground. But a sudden, desperate cry fills the air as Narumitsu's eyes snap open in horror. The delinquent leader has now turned his attention to Momozaki, grabbing her and telling her to stay with him. From the ground, Narumitsu sees her terrified face, surrounded by the bully's menacing presence. The third year leans in close, his intentions making Momozaki scream in pure terror. And Narumitsu can only watch, his own pain forgotten in the face of her distress. But seeing her in danger, something inside Narumitsu finally snaps. A strange, fiery energy begins to course through his veins as he pushes himself up. His eyes ignite with the same terrifying intensity he wielded as the Demon King. With a surge of raw power, he launches himself forward like a bullet and lands a devastating blow right on the delinquent leader's jaw. Momozaki can only watch in stunned disbelief at the sudden turn of events. Even Kishimura is frozen, completely shocked by this impossible display of strength. The third year is brought to his knees as Narumitsu declares that his own pain is irrelevant. He stands over his tormentor, radiating an aura of pure, unyielding resolve. His one and only demand is that they never lay a hand on Momozaki again. But the adrenaline quickly fades, leaving Narumitsu flustered by his own bold declaration. Momozaki can only stare in awe, calling out his name in disbelief. He turns away, his face hidden in shadow as he apologizes to her, filled with regret that his weakness put her in danger in the first place. But she doesn't see weakness. She only sees the hero who just saved her. With a bright smile, she thanks him for being so cool, calling him by his first name. Narumitsu is completely stunned, shocked that she would be so familiar with him. But their moment is shattered by a furious voice telling him not to get cocky. The third-year leader is back on his feet, his entire body radiating pure, unrestrained fury. He lunges forward with a murderous glint in his eyes, promising to end Narumitsu right here and now. But Narumitsu stands his ground, declaring that he will not be afraid anymore. As the third year's fist comes flying in, our boy raises his arm to block. He effortlessly parries the blow, the force of the impact crackling around them. With a surge of strength, he stops the punch dead in its tracks. The delinquent leader can only stare in disbelief, enraged that his attack was blocked. Narumitsu's eyes burn with resolve, ready to use this power to protect someone, and he winds up for a devastating counterattack. A powerful kick connects with the third-year side with incredible force. The delinquent leader is sent flying, completely overpowered by the blow, and Narumitsu stands victorious, a fiery aura radiating from his entire body. Before he can process what's happening, Momozaki grabs his hand. She tells him they need to run, and he can only agree in his daze. The two of them flee the scene, leaving the defeated bully on the ground. Kishimura's remaining friend can only stare in disbelief, wondering if that was really Narumitsu. They run until the chaos of the school is far behind them. Finally slowing down, they're both completely out of breath from the escape. Narumitsu figures they've gone far enough that the delinquents won't follow. But Momozaki gets his attention, a gentle smile on her face. She quietly points out that he's still holding her hand. The realization sends Narumitsu into a complete flustered panic. Momozaki can't help but laugh at his frantic reaction. She waves it off, assuring him that she didn't mind at all. Admitting that her own heart was beating a little fast from the excitement, the confession sends Narumitsu into another wave of flustered apologies. She just smiles, telling him he's overthinking things as they stop by a vending machine. She then recounts the day's events, amazed that he defeated the school's top delinquent to save her. She grabs a drink from the machine and offers it to him with a bright smile, telling him to be more confident. Narumitsu can only stare, completely overwhelmed by her kindness. She calls it her way of thanking him before quickly saying goodbye and heading home. She walks away with a faint blush, leaving Narumitsu to his thoughts. He can only stammer out a thank you, still completely bewildered by the day's events. But as he walks home, the adrenaline fades and the pain reminds him this isn't a game. His arms are swollen and bruised from blocking the attacks, a harsh dose of reality. And he realizes with a heavy heart that he never wants to fight like that again. But his quiet walk home is suddenly shattered by the roar of an engine. A motorcycle swerves directly into his path, forcing him to stumble back in shock. At the same time, a large van screeches to a halt right behind him. He's trapped, brought to his knees in the middle of a carefully orchestrated ambush. And from the van emerges a blonde man with a cruel, predatory smile. A whole crew of delinquents begins to pour out of the vehicle, surrounding him. It's a full-blown gang, and they all look ready for a fight. Narumitsu can only stare up in terror, completely outnumbered and outmatched. The blonde leader steps forward, his voice dripping with mock praise for Narumitsu's reflexes. He casually mentions that he actually ordered his men to run him over completely. Barely able to speak, Narumitsu asks what they could possibly want from him. The leader explains that he heard a rumor about some kid who beat down Okise and his crew, so he decided to come and see this legendary fighter for himself. Narumitsu asks if this is just another case of a leader's pride being on the line. But the man clarifies that Okise was one of his strongest underlings, making this a much more serious matter. He smirks, explaining that anyone who can beat Okise must be worth breaking. To him, all challengers are the same. They all end up in the hospital anyway. And to demonstrate his point, he suddenly strikes one of his own men without warning. His eyes glow with manic energy as he screams Narumitsu's name, showing him what's to come. He crosses two metal pipes, repeating his threat with a chilling smile. All he wants is a good show before the inevitable conclusion. With that, he turns his attention back to Narumitsu, swinging with full force. Our boy is frozen in shock, unable to believe the casual brutality he just witnessed. The metal pipe connects with his head, the impact sending him reeling. But he somehow dodges the full force of the blow, realizing he could have easily died. The blonde leader's smile only widens, impressed that his target actually moved. Narumitsu can only pant in terror, the reality of his situation sinking in, but his fear only excites the gang leader, who loves to see strong opponents broken and bloodied. His eyes glow with a menacing green energy as he declares that this is the kind of fight he lives for. Narumitsu realizes this man isn't just a bully, he's a monster who thrives on violence. The leader tosses one of his pipes aside, deciding to get serious. He explains the sheer ecstasy he feels when he beats down someone strong. Narumitsu turns to flee, his survival instinct screaming at him to run, because it proves their inferiority as he unleashes a vicious, relentless assault. A question that reveals the true depths of his twisted mind. But Narumitsu wants no part of this sadistic game, turning to flee. He knows he can't afford to get caught by this monster. The gang leader simply watches him go, knowing that running is pointless. His men have already surrounded the area, cutting off any hope of escape. With a grin, the blonde man leaps into the air, ready to bring his weapon down. Cornered and with no other choice, Narumitsu's fear finally turns into resolve. He realizes he has to go all out if he wants to survive this encounter. and with a powerful leap, he launches himself into the air to meet the attack head-on. His one and only thought is to take this man down right here and now. But the gang leader catches the punch with ease, impressed by Narumitsu's speed. Our boy can only stare in disbelief, his attack completely neutralized. The leader smirks, admitting that Narumitsu is the first person to ever dodge his initial strike. And before Narumitsu can react, he's sent flying by a powerful kick to the chest. The blonde man lectures him about the dangers of not preparing for a counterattack. A lesson our boy learns the hard way as he's caught completely off guard. He crashes to the ground, the leader's chilling words echoing in his ears. He clutches his chest in agony, the force of the blow taking his breath away. Looming over him, the gang leader raises his pipe, declaring that the fight is over. And with a final, manic grin, he brings the weapon down for the finishing blow. But at the last second, Narumitsu throws up his arm to block the blow. His hand trembles from the sheer force of the impact, but he holds his ground. The blonde leader smirks, surprised that the fight isn't over yet. He seems genuinely impressed that Narumitsu is still standing at all. Narumitsu knows that if he takes any more hits, the pain will be too much to bear. So he resolves to remember the feeling from the game and not take another blow. His eyes ignite with a familiar burning intensity, as he vows that he will not lose to a guy like this. With a surge of power, he launches himself forward, ready to end it. He rushes in, aiming a powerful strike right at the gang leader's chest. But the gang leader stops the punch with just 2 fingers, a confident smirk on his face. The blow is caught with an almost casual ease, completely neutralizing Narumitsu's desperate attack. He even offers a bit of praise, impressed by the kid's raw power. But Narumitsu doesn't hesitate, immediately launching into another strike. He unleashes a furious barrage of attacks trying to overwhelm his opponent. With a surge of adrenaline, he vows to end this fight right here and now. But once again, his fist is caught mid-air, his attack completely shut down. The blonde leader uses his momentum against him, flipping him over with ease. And Narumitsu is sent crashing hard onto the unforgiving pavement. The blonde leader explains that unlike the others, he has no pride to protect. He finds concepts like reputation to be foolish, caring only for the feeling of victory, because seeing his opponents broken and bloody is the only pleasure he truly craves. Narumitsu can only listen in horror, realizing the true depths of this man's cruelty. As the other gang members close in, the weight of his situation becomes terrifyingly clear, but instead of giving in to fear, a new resolve hardens his expression. The delinquents charge forward, ready to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. But Narumitsu moves with a newfound grace, dodging their clumsy attacks. He unleashes a powerful strike of his own, his eyes burning with raw energy. The blow connects with devastating force, sending the first attacker flying. He lands another punch, his movements fluid and precise. Weaving through the crowd, he becomes an unstoppable force. Each strike finds its mark with devastating accuracy. His eyes burn with the focus of a seasoned warrior. He takes down one attacker after another in a blur of motion. For a moment, he stands like a king on the battlefield, surrounded by his defeated foes. But a shadowy figure suddenly appears, blocking his next move with ease. Narumitsu's confidence shatters as he realizes who he's facing. A powerful stomp connects with his leg, crippling his stance. He falls to his knees, his body suddenly refusing to obey his commands. The gang leader brings his foot down, ready to crush Narumitsu's leg. But our boy grits his teeth, refusing to break under the immense pressure. Suddenly, a flash of white hair and a devastating kick sends the leader flying. A new student stands where the leader once was, his posture calm and collected. Narumitsu can only stare, completely baffled by this unexpected savior. The mysterious newcomer looks down, his presence far more intimidating than any delinquent. In a blur of motion, he effortlessly dismantles the rest of the gang. The blonde leader can only watch in stunned silence, unable to process his defeat. Narumitsu is just as shocked, witnessing a level of power he's never seen before. And just like that, the entire gang is left unconscious on the pavement. Narumitsu tries to walk away from the chaos, his body still aching, but his savior remarks that he never expected to find him in a place like this. With a confident smile, he announces that he's come to get him. Narumitsu can only look up, completely bewildered by this turn of events. The white-haired student makes it clear that Narumitsu is coming with him. Stunned, Narumitsu asks how he could possibly know his in-game account name. The newcomer simply notes that the system seems to be functioning correctly. The revelation leaves Narumitsu speechless, his mind racing to understand. But the defeated gang leader rises to his feet, his body radiating a furious green energy. He screams that he doesn't care who this new guy is, he's about to pay for interfering. The The gang leader grips his pipe, his green aura flaring with rage. He leaps forward, screaming that his fun was just getting started. But the white-haired student doesn't even flinch as the attack comes flying in. Instead, a confident smirk appears on his face as a purple aura surrounds him. He effortlessly raises his leg to meet the blow head-on. The impact sends a shockwave through the air, completely stopping the attack. Before the leader can recover, the student lands a powerful punch to his face. The blonde man can only grit his teeth, stunned by this impossible display of strength. With a mocking smile, the newcomer challenges him to actually try and fight back. He then lands another vicious strike, sending the gang leader reeling. He promises to give the gang leader the very same feeling of being conquered that he loves to inflict. The blonde man is stunned, wondering how this stranger could possibly know about him. The newcomer reveals that he's well aware of his reputation as the leader of the local delinquents. He identifies him as Agawa Soichi, the infamous head of a vicious biker gang, a man known for brutalizing his opponents and leaving them on the brink of death. His reputation is so widespread that every delinquent in the area knows his name. Agawa can only laugh, clearly enjoying the attention and the fear he inspires. But the white-haired student tells Naramitsu not to bother remembering the name. Enraged, Agawa unleashes his power, screaming that everyone here is beneath him. The mysterious student simply smirks, completely unimpressed by the display. He calls Agawa trash, a label that sends the gang leader into a manic frenzy. The gang leader seethes with rage, his green aura flaring to life. He launches himself forward, screaming that he'll make his opponent pay. But his charge is met with a single devastating punch to the face. Naramitsu can only watch in absolute awe at the display of power. With a final crushing stomp, the white-haired student ends the fight for good. He looks down on his defeated foe, remarking that even the infamous Agawa was nothing more than a disappointment in the end. As they walk away from the scene, Naramitsu finally finds his voice to thank him. The mysterious student just smiles, telling him not to worry about it. He explains that eliminating Agawa was simply a necessary step to accomplish his objective. With a confident smirk, he turns to Naramitsu and tells him to follow. But Naramitsu demands to know how he could possibly know his in-game name. The mysterious student simply brushes off the question, refusing to answer. Naramitsu stands his ground, declaring that he's not moving until he gets the truth. But his savior calmly informs him that he doesn't have the freedom to choose. He then pulls out 2 photographs, showing Naramitsu's sister and father. The sight sends a wave of pure shock and horror through our boy. The white-haired student makes the threat clear. If he refuses to come along, his family will be in danger. Naramitsu's fear instantly ignites into rage as he asks if he's being threatened. The white-haired student calmly states that if Naramitsu comes along quietly, then nothing bad will happen to the people he cares about. But he then offers a different kind of incentive, a question our boy can't ignore. He asks if Naramitsu wants to know the real reason he suddenly gained this incredible power. The question hits Naramitsu like a physical blow, leaving him completely stunned. He can barely form the words, asking if the stranger really knows. What happened to his body to make all of this possible? The mysterious student's confident smirk is all the answer he needs. Naramitsu looks down at his own fist, the source of all this chaos and confusion. With his resolve hardened, he agrees to go with him, desperate for answers. With a satisfied smirk, the mysterious student seems pleased with Naramitsu's decision. He gestures towards a sleek black car, telling our boy to get inside. Naramitsu can only stare in shock at the luxury vehicle waiting for them. They drive through the bustling city streets, surrounded by the evening crowds. The bright lights of the city blur past the window as they head deeper into the metropolis. Their destination is soon revealed to be the city's entertainment district. Naramitsu is completely mesmerized, his face pressed against the glass like a kid in a candy store. They arrive at a building with a glowing red sign, a place Naramitsu immediately recognizes as a shady-looking club. He nervously tries to protest, reminding his guide that he's still a minor. But the white-haired student simply smiles, explaining that his age is no issue since they own the entire establishment. The revelation leaves Naramitsu completely speechless, his mind reeling. His guide leads him through the club to a set of imposing VIP doors. Naramitsu can only follow, still trying to process the night's impossible events. Inside, 2 other figures are waiting for them in the dimly lit room. The white-haired student welcomes him to a place called Vermilion Shadow. Naramitsu looks up, his expression a mix of confusion and apprehension. One of the figures is a large man in a suit, his face completely obscured by shadow. The other is a young woman with a punk aesthetic and a curious smile. It's clear that the white-haired student is the one in charge here. He repeats the welcome, his red eyes fixed on Naramitsu with an unnerving intensity. The white-haired student explains that Vermilion Shadow, or VS for short, is an organization that solves all sorts of problems through illegal means. He bluntly informs Narumitsu that he's been brought to an underground group. The words hang in the air, leaving our boy completely speechless. Just then, the punk girl gets up to get a closer look at their new recruit. She circles him with a curious smirk, asking if this is really the legendary Demon King. Narumitsu can only blush, completely flustered by the sudden close attention. She leans in, openly doubting his strength based on his weak appearance. Before he can react, she suddenly lifts his shirt, catching him completely off guard. She steps back with a knowing smile, leaving Narumitsu to recompose himself in the background. She finds his flustered state incredibly amusing, a wicked smile on her face. But her playful demeanor vanishes as she suddenly fires a weapon, the bullet whizzing right past Narumitsu's ear. She stands there, a pink aura flaring around her, clearly testing his limits. He can only watch in horror, realizing how close he just came to the end. His eyes fixate on the bullet hole in the wall, just inches from where he stood. He stumbles back, his mind struggling to process the sudden attack. The sheer terror on his face says it all as he realizes it was a real gun. But the girl is simply impressed, praising his incredible reflexes. And with a confident smirk, she aims the weapon directly at his face. But before she can pull the trigger, the large man in the suit moves with blinding speed. He grabs her wrist, his glowing red eyes fixed on her with a silent warning. This is Hizaki, and he is clearly not amused by her reckless test. He scolds her, asking if she understands the consequences of her actions. But the girl just smirks, completely unfazed by the threat. She suggests that if he couldn't dodge, he would have simply met his end. Narumitsu can only watch in horror, realizing what kind of people he's been brought to. He understands now that no matter how he looks at it, these people are not normal. Their squabble is cut short by the white-haired leader telling them that's enough. He specifically calls out Hizaki's behavior, bringing the tension to a halt. He admits that Hizaki's methods are far from praiseworthy, but it seems to have helped Narumitsu understand the gravity of his situation. The leader addresses him directly as the Demon King, ready to get down to business. He explains that what they do here isn't a game, it's a serious operation. With a chilling smile, he asks Narumitsu if he's ever heard of the Senmiya group. Narumitsu confirms that he has, recognizing the name of a massive corporate empire, a mega corporation with over 1 million employees and thousands of companies under its belt. An entity so powerful that its influence touches every corner of the country. The white-haired leader seems pleased that Narumitsu is already aware of their reach, but a sudden realization dawns on Narumitsu, wondering if this was all part of the plan. He realizes that his own high school is a private institution, affiliated with the very same Senmiya group. The white-haired leader then adds another layer to the conspiracy, reminding Narumitsu of the hospital he was taken to the other day. That facility, too, is part of the Senmiya group's vast network. A cold sweat runs down his back as the pieces begin to connect. He then reveals that Vermilion Shadow is the Senmiya group's secret unit. The people in this room are its executives leading an organization, with over 100 members and collaborators operating in the shadows. Narumitsu struggles to comprehend the scale of it all, asking why they're telling him this. The leader explains that it's because, starting today, Narumitsu is a member of Vermilion Shadow. Our boy can only stand there, a small figure in a room full of predators. The leader notes the look of defiance on his face, seeing that he wants to refuse. But he calmly reminds Narumitsu to remember why he agreed to come here. He clarifies that it's not just Vermilion Shadow threatening him, but the entire Senmiya group. He's simply the messenger, conveying the corporation's true intentions. And if Narumitsu were to refuse this generous offer, then the worst-case scenario would come to pass. With a chillingly calm expression, he states that they would have to eliminate his family. The threat sends a jolt of pure, unadulterated terror through Narumitsu's entire being. He can only ask why they would go to such lengths, and why they're so obsessed with someone like him. The desperation is clear in his voice, as he screams that he wants no part of their world. But his outburst is met with a cold, calculating silence. The white-haired leader simply watches him, a thoughtful look on his face. He finally begins to explain the real reason. Why the Senmiya group is so fixated on him. It's because he's a top-ranked player in the VR game Desperate Hellfire, and in that world, he is known as the legendary Demon King. Narumitsu can only stare in disbelief, the pieces slowly falling into place. The white-haired leader continues, explaining that the one who gave him this power is none other than the Senmiya group itself. Narumitsu struggles to process the impossible truth he's just been told. He asks if this is all happening just because he's a top ranker in the game, but the logic behind it all completely escapes him. The leader admits that he understands Narumitsu's confusion. He admits that he was skeptical at first as well, but points out that Naramitsu just dodged a bullet at point-blank range. A feat that he declares is simply not possible for any normal human being. The leader tells him what he already knows deep down, that he's no longer normal. Desperate, Naramitsu demands to know what the Senmiya group did to his body. He's certain some kind of procedure was performed on him back at the hospital, but the white-haired leader calmly explains that he's not permitted to answer that question. Naramitsu can only look down, trapped with no answers and no way out. The punk girl then chimes in, offering him a different kind of deal. If he can achieve results as a member of Vermilion Shadow, the Senmiya group will personally arrange a meeting to answer all of his questions. It's a calculated offer, delivered with a confident, knowing smile. Naramitsu looks back, realizing he has no choice but to accept their terms. The leader offers one final, simple condition. If Naramitsu becomes one of them, he will personally guarantee the safety of his family. Naramitsu's fist trembles with a mix of rage and helplessness. He grits his teeth, knowing he's been backed into a corner. With no other choice, he finally agrees to their terms. The leader's satisfied smile returns, declaring the matter settled. He then prepares to make the formal introductions. The girl who shot at him is introduced as a VS executive named Hizaki, and the quiet, imposing man in the suit is another executive, Ryun. With a confident gesture, the white-haired student reveals that he is the leader of VS. He finally introduces himself as the leader of VS, Serizawa Naka, telling Naramitsu that they're counting on his performance. Naramitsu can only look on, the weight of his new reality sinking in. The next morning, he finds himself back at the familiar school building. He walks through the halls, letting out a heavy sigh. The events of the previous day are still weighing heavily on his mind. From Kishimura to Okise, and even the monstrous Agawa, he feels like his body simply can't take any more of this chaos. But as he enters the classroom, he overhears his classmates whispering his name. The entire class seems to be buzzing with the news of his victory. He's immediately startled by the sudden attention from his classmates. One of them approaches his desk, excitedly asking if he really beat Okise. Naramitsu can only stammer, realizing word of yesterday's fight has spread. Before he knows it, a crowd of students has gathered around his desk. They praise him for hiding his true strength, calling his victory awesome. Another student admits he was also a victim, feeling great that someone finally took Okise down. To everyone's relief, it seems none of the delinquents even came to school today. Even Momozaki watches the scene unfold with a warm, knowing smile. And for the first time, Naramitsu feels a genuine sense of acceptance. The school day passes in a blur, his entire world having changed overnight. As he walks with Momozaki, she teases him about his newfound popularity. But Naramitsu admits that the sudden shift in everyone's attitude feels a little strange. Momozaki explains that until he stepped up, the delinquents ran the school through fear. Most students were too terrified of being targeted to ever fight back. So now they all look up to him for finally putting the bullies in their place. Her logic seems to make sense to him, though he's still a bit flustered. She insists that's exactly what happened, her confidence unwavering. With a bright smile, she tells him that what he did yesterday was incredibly cool. He can only offer a shy thank you as other students whisper about his good looks. It seems his reputation has completely changed, with girls now wondering about his love life. But his moment of peace is shattered by a familiar, unwelcome presence. Leaning against a wall is Serizawa, the leader of Vermilion Shadow. Naramitsu's eyes widen as he spots the sleek black car waiting nearby. With a casual gesture, Serizawa informs him that it's time to go to work. He turns to Momozaki, awkwardly explaining that he can't walk her home after all. She seems confused but tells him it's okay, though her curiosity is piqued. Naramitsu quickly says his goodbyes, promising to see her the next day. He then gets into the luxury car as other students watch in disbelief. Momozaki can only stare after him, wondering who that mysterious person could be. Inside, Naramitsu immediately complains to Serizawa about being picked up in such a conspicuous vehicle. Serizawa simply brushes off the complaint, leaving Naramitsu to stew in his anxiety. Finally breaking the silence, our boy nervously asks what kind of work they're actually doing. The VS leader begins the briefing by asking if he's familiar with a place called Kinji Town. Naramitsu immediately recognizes it as a famous entertainment district as they pull up to the entrance. Serizawa explains that a certain group has been causing trouble for the local restaurants. He identifies them as the Yaguma Gang, a militant outfit made up of former Yakuza members, and with a cold, determined look, he declares that Vermilion Shadow is in charge of eliminating them. The word eliminating sends a jolt of pure panic through Naramitsu. He can only process the fact that his first mission is to take on actual Yakuza as the car speeds toward its destination. Serizawa reiterates that this group has been terrorizing the businesses in Kinji Town. Serizawa continues, identifying their target as the Yaguma gang. And with a cold look, he declares that Vermilion Shadow's job is to eliminate them. Naramitsu is completely bewildered by the sudden mission briefing, asking why they've stopped at the very same hospital he was treated at. He wonders if the gang is hiding out here, but Serizawa tells him they're not. The confusion only deepens as our boy tries to understand their objective. With a confident smile, Serizawa simply tells him to follow his lead. As they enter, the hospital staff are immediately captivated by Serizawa's presence. They walk down the quiet, sterile hallway, heading deeper into the facility. Serizawa finally stops in front of a patient's room, announcing that this is their destination. The name on the door reads Sonohashi, a name Narumitsu doesn't recognize, leaving him completely confused. Serizawa explains that the man inside was brutally assaulted by the Yaguma gang, and that he is both their client and the victim of the attack. The word victim hangs in the air as Narumitsu looks on with concern. His eyes widen as he begins to understand the gravity of the situation. Inside the room, a man lies unconscious, covered in bandages. His face is a canvas of bruises, a testament to the gang's cruelty. Narumitsu can only stare, shocked by the terrible state of their client. Even his hands are wrapped, showing the extent of the brutal beating he endured. Serizawa calmly addresses the man in the bed, confirming his identity. The injured man jolts awake, weakly asking who they are. Serizawa tells him to calm down, explaining they've come in response to his request. He then introduces himself as Serizawa, the one sent to help. He clarifies that the Senmiya group received a formal request under Sonohashi's name. The VS leader asks if this information is correct, his gaze unwavering. Sonohashi confirms it, admitting he was desperate to deal with the Yaguma gang. He explains that he reached out to a contact at Senmiya, who promised a special team would take care of it. With a reassuring look, Serizawa promises that they will fulfill his request. But first, he needs to hear every last detail of the situation. Sonohashi begins to recount the events that led to his current state. He explains that he runs multiple restaurants throughout the Kinji Town district. As his business grew, he naturally took on the role of community leader. He was responsible for organizing the other business owners in the area, and was involved in what he calls certain self-governance activities. The term leaves Naramitsu completely confused, unsure of what it implies. Sonohashi clarifies that with the town's underworld ties, they often have to solve problems the police can't. But a little while ago, a new and far more dangerous threat arrived. The Yaguma gang had moved into their territory, driven by a relentless hunger for money. Naramitsu listens to the story, his expression hardening with grim understanding. He explains how they started breaking into restaurants, threatening people and extorting money. So he arranged a meeting with the gang's leader, a man named Yaguma. He tried to negotiate, hoping to convince them to stop their threats. But his current state reveals how poorly that went. He fears that if the Yaguma gang is left unchecked, many more businesses will suffer. His story is suddenly cut short by the sound of a buzzing phone. It's an incoming call from an unknown number. Sonohashi's hand trembles as he reaches for the device. A look of pure terror flashes across his face. He recognizes the number as the one belonging to Yaguma himself. But Serizawa calmly instructs him to answer the call, and the terrified man obeys. The voice on the other end complains that many of the local shops are still refusing to pay up. So, the gang leader has decided to make an example out of Sonohashi to send a message. The word example hangs in the air, filling the injured man with a new kind of dread. Yaguma then reveals that they've just sent a message from his daughter's phone. The implication is clear, and Sonohashi's mind struggles to process the horrifying threat. The gang leader explains that when the others see what happens, their children might be next. It's a cruel tactic to ensure everyone in the district quietly hands over their money. Sonohashi's fear finally explodes into rage as he screams into the phone, demanding to know what they did to his daughter. His hand trembles, his voice cracking as he repeats the gang leader's name. Naramitsu can only ask in horror what the gang leader has done. The desperate father grabs onto him, pleading for them to help her. Tears stream down his face as he chokes out his daughter's name. Mizuki. And in Naramitsu's eyes, a familiar fire of resolve begins to burn. The phone screen reveals a horrifying picture, a young woman bound and blindfolded. Sonohashi confirms their worst fears, explaining that Mizuki has been kidnapped, taken by the very same Yaguma gang that put him in this hospital bed. He grabs Naramitsu by the collar, his voice breaking as he calls her his only precious daughter. With everything on the line, he begs them to save her, to bring Mizuki back. But Serizawa's expression remains cold and unreadable as he considers the situation. He admits that this new world still doesn't feel real to him. but he knows that an innocent girl shouldn't have to suffer for it. That much at least is perfectly clear. With a fiery resolve, he makes a solemn promise to the desperate father that he will bring his daughter back, and so Narumitsu and Serizawa head into the neon-lit streets of Kinji Town. They move through the bustling crowds, their mission now clear and urgent. The two of them cut a path through the city's nightlife, ready to begin the search. All around them, the city goes on, completely oblivious to the dark dealings in its shadows. Serizawa notes with a smirk that Narumitsu seems far more motivated for this mission than he expected. But Narumitsu clarifies that he's not doing this because it's a VS mission. His only motivation is to save Sanahashi's daughter, to save Mizuki from the people who hurt her father. Serizawa simply smirks, telling him that his personal reasons are irrelevant. As long as Narumitsu gets the job done, that's all that matters. He then explains that kidnapping Mizuki was meant to be a public example. If they don't act fast, the gang will only make things worse for the hostage. According to the Senmiya Group's intel, the Yaguma gang has multiple bases and properties scattered all throughout Kinji Town, and it's in one of those locations that they'll most likely find Mizuki. Serizawa explains that the gang would most likely use a building they already control. He reveals that Hizaki and Ryun are already heading to the other known bases with VS collaborators. A full-scale operation to hit every possible location at once. Their plan is to simultaneously search all of Yaguma's properties to find the hostage. Their first stop is a loud, chaotic club, a place Narumitsu has clearly never been. He's completely out of his element, a world he never thought he'd be a part of. But Serizawa reveals that the owner of this very establishment is Yaguma himself. He notes that the quality of the customers reflects the owner's character. But even in a place like this, Narumitsu is still stopped for age verification. He realizes with a jolt that they've even prepared a forged ID for him. Serizawa explains that the Senmiya Group spares no expense to ensure their missions are a success. Meanwhile, in a darker corner of the club, two thugs are looking for trouble, and they share a sinister grin as they spot their next target. He continues, explaining that VS is far more privileged than any other underground organization. They push through the chaotic crowd, the noise clearly getting to Narumitsu. But Serizawa's expression remains cold and focused, his eyes scanning the room. His gaze suddenly snaps to the side as he senses a disturbance. He spots the two thugs from before, now harassing another customer. One of them suddenly lashes out, sending the man flying to the ground. The two delinquents loom over their victim, declaring that he's the one with the problem. He holds up a small bag of powder, claiming he found it after noticing Narumitsu's suspicious movements. He and his friend then accuse our boy of bringing illegal substances into their club. Narumitsu immediately denies it, insisting that they planted the evidence on him. The thug just plays dumb, pretending he has no idea what our boy is talking about. He then leans in close, offering to make the problem go away, in exchange for every last bit of cash in Narumitsu's wallet. But Narumitsu grabs him by the collar, asking if this is how they always treat their patrons. The delinquent just laughs, saying they only pull this on kids who don't belong. He continues to mock him, saying, a place like this is still too early for him. But Narumitsu's expression hardens as he declares that this place is completely rotten. The thug's face twists in anger, demanding to know what he just said. Narumitsu calmly repeats his assessment that they are completely rotten. A fiery aura ignites around him, his patience clearly at its end. Enraged, the thug lunges forward, ready to teach him a lesson. But Narumitsu meets the attack with a devastating blow of his own. He realizes that this scuffle has at least gotten him into the back of the club, where he now stands over his defeated opponents, his aura still burning. The remaining thug can only stare in absolute terror at the scene. Narumitsu's gaze is cold and unwavering, his focus now on the mission. He demands to know where he can find the gang's leader, Yaguma. The last thug can only tremble in fear before Narumitsu's overwhelming presence. With burning eyes, our boy repeats his demand to know where Yaguma is. The terrified man immediately points down the hall, giving up his leader's location. Without a moment's hesitation, Narumitsu moves toward the back rooms. He's relieved to hear that their main target is right here in this building. From the sidelines, Serizawa smirks, noting that this avoids a worst-case scenario. Narumitsu is just glad he won't have to search all the other gang hideouts. He even offers a quick thank you to his informant before heading off. But the thug's fear quickly boils over into pure, humiliated rage. Screaming in defiance, he lunges at Narumitsu's back for a surprise attack. But Narumitsu's senses are already tingling, his eyes glowing with power. He spins around and unleashes a devastating punch, his fist wreathed in flames. The thug is sent flying, his cheap shot completely backfiring. Narumitsu remarks that he wasn't planning to use force. but now he's left another one of Yaguma's men unconscious on the floor. But as he continues down the hall, he's suddenly stopped in his tracks. He finds another one of the gang members already taken down by someone else. A familiar purple aura emanates from the end of the corridor, where Serizawa is interrogating the man, asking for the location of the Demon King. Naramitsu rushes forward, calling out to his leader in surprise. Serizawa looks over, his expression shifting from focus to surprise. He calmly tells Naramitsu that he's safe, revealing he was already handling the situation. A blue-haired boy appears, sheepishly apologizing for getting caught in the first place. But he quickly confirms that he successfully gathered the information they needed. He points down the hall, explaining that their target, Yaguma, is just up ahead. Serizawa understands, declaring their next move is to get Mizuki's location directly from the source. The two of them stand ready, their objective now within reach. The blue-haired boy playfully asks if Serizawa was worried, but gets a cold denial in return. Meanwhile, the thug Naramitsu defeated earlier groans as he reaches for his phone. His face twists in panic as he realizes he needs to send an emergency warning. A desperate message warning that intruders have breached the back rooms. But it's too late, as Serizawa and Naramitsu are already making their way down the hall. They stop in front of a door marked for staff, the tension in the air growing thicker. Naramitsu's expression hardens, his initial nervousness giving way to a grim resolve. With a confident smirk, Serizawa asks if his new recruit is ready for what's next. Because just beyond the door, a welcoming party of Yaguma's thugs is waiting for them. The two of them stand before the gang, completely unfazed by the sheer numbers. The apparent leader of the group steps forward, a cruel smile on his face as he identifies the intruders. He notes their unfriendly expressions, a fact that neither Naramitsu nor Serizawa bothers to deny. With a twisted grin, the thug makes it clear that negotiations are officially off the table. With a single command, the entire group of thugs charges forward in a frenzy. But Naramitsu's eyes widen in shock as one of them pulls out a real blade. The thug swings the weapon with deadly intent, aiming right for his head. Naramitsu ducks just in time as the rest of the gang closes in with bats and fists. He narrowly avoids another strike, the sheer force of it whistling past his ear. The reality of the situation sinks in. This is far more dangerous than he thought. Another one of the thugs lunges forward, his fist aimed right at Naramitsu's face. But our boy reacts with a powerful kick, deflecting the blow with his leg. He quickly realizes he's facing a large number of enemies with dangerous weapons. And for a moment, he's unsure how he can possibly handle this situation. But as he hesitates, Serizawa's voice cuts through the chaos. He reminds Naramitsu that in the game, he fought countless battles against multiple foes. And this situation is no different from those virtual wars. He tells our boy to remember who he is, the strongest ranker, the Demon King. The words hit home, and Naramitsu realizes that with this body, he should be able to move just like his avatar. But the thugs just laugh, mocking him for comparing this to a game. They scream at him, calling him an idiot for his delusion. But Naramitsu tunes them out, his mind returning to the world of desperate hellfire. He remembers the skills needed to survive, reflexes, control, and a perfect assessment of the battlefield. And in an instant, he analyzes his opponents. 4 enemies, 1 with a blade, 2 with bats, and 1 unarmed. He quickly breaks down their strengths and weaknesses in his mind, but his quiet analysis only enrages the thugs, who charge forward in a blind fury. Naramitsu takes a deep breath, remembering the first rule of combat is to stay calm, and to keep his mind sharp, because only then can he truly fight. His mind flashes back to the game, channeling the overwhelming power of his Demon King avatar. He unleashes a flurry of attacks, moving with impossible speed and precision. Each blow lands with the force of a virtual god, wreathed in a fiery aura. He knows that if he can just tap into that feeling from the game, then there is absolutely no way he can possibly lose this fight. And just like that, he stands alone amidst the wreckage of his defeated foes. Serizawa watches with a smirk, impressed by Naramitsu's performance. Naramitsu turns to his leader, thanking him for the crucial advice. The blue-haired boy joins them, and Serizawa declares it's time to move. He gives the order to crush the remaining thugs without delay. The blue-haired boy agrees as Serizawa's eyes glow with a purple aura. With a burst of speed, the blue-haired boy leaps into the fray. Serizawa follows suit, unleashing a powerful strike of his own, but one of the thugs makes a desperate break for the elevator. He knows he has to warn his boss before it's too late. But Naramitsu is already there, cutting off his escape with a fiery punch. The last thug can only think of his boss's name in his desperation. Another one of the gang members makes a last-ditch effort to call the elevator, but his attempt is cut short by a powerful fist, shattering the call button. The elevator doors slide open, revealing their path forward. Narumitsu looks on as the last of the thugs are taken down, knowing their target is just beyond. Serizawa moves with blinding speed, clearing the remaining opposition with his purple energy. His eyes glow with a cold, calculated intensity. He tells Narumitsu to push forward while he handles the rest of the grunts. With a surge of fiery resolve, Narumitsu charges ahead, ready to face Yaguma. His eyes burn with a single-minded focus on the mission ahead. But the last of the thugs try to block his path, refusing to let him pass. He knows that if he's trapped here with them, his mission will fail. So with a surge of fiery determination, he decides to simply force his way through. He unleashes his full power, his body wreathed in a familiar orange glow. With a powerful kick, he clears the way forward. He slides under the closing shutter just in the nick of time. He's made it through, leaving the rest of the gang behind. For a moment, he wonders if Serizawa is all right back there. But he quickly dismisses the thought, knowing his leader can handle himself. He knows that if Yaguma is just up ahead, he can't afford to let him escape. He decides that finding Yaguma is more important than regrouping with Serizawa. He carefully pushes open the door to the private room, and what he sees on the other side leaves him completely stunned. He finds himself in a luxurious VIP lounge, a hidden space in the back of the club. A voice from within explains that this is a top-secret room for underworld guests only. The sudden voice makes him jump, realizing he's not alone. The man with the cigar admits he was curious who would be bold enough to barge in, but he never expected to see such a scrawny-looking kid. This is the gang's leader, Yaguma Kuhei, and he's clearly unimpressed by the intruder. Narumitsu's eyes burn with intensity as he calls out Yaguma's name. The gang leader just smirks, casually asking what business the kid has with him. Narumitsu's fist tightens, his resolve hardening for the confrontation. With a surge of fiery energy, he declares that he's here to rescue Mizuki. Yaguma feigns confusion, repeating the name as if it means nothing to him. He taps his head, pretending to search his memory for the girl he kidnapped. A sudden snap of his fingers indicates a moment of mock realization. He confirms that he remembers the girl now, his tone dripping with condescension. But before Narumitsu can react, he's sent flying across the room by a sudden, brutal attack. A deep gash opens on his cheek, the force of the blow sending a spray of blood into the air. He crashes into a nearby stool, the furniture exploding from the sheer force of the impact. Narumitsu can only stare in shock, the fresh wound on his cheek a stinging reminder of his opponent's speed. Yaguma then reveals the very girl he came to save, tied up and helpless at his feet. Narumitsu can only scream her name, his heart sinking at the sight of her. The gang leader warns him that if he doesn't want to see her get hurt, then he'd better not take another step forward. Narumitsu freezes, his body paralyzed by a mix of rage and helplessness. Mizuki can only look on in terror, tears streaming down her face. Yaguma's expression darkens as he realizes Sanahashi must have sent this kid. He places his foot on Mizuki's back, declaring that his gang will lose face if she's taken back. He offers Narumitsu one last chance to walk away, a final condescending warning. The gang leader leans in close, taunting him for being so far out of his depth. But our boy grits his teeth, the pressure mounting with every passing second. Yaguma's presence is overwhelming, a constant reminder of the hostage's fate. And in his eyes, the reflection of Mizuki's terror fuels his resolve. A fiery aura ignites around him as he makes a silent promise to the girl. He remembers his vow to save Mizuki, a promise he made to her desperate father. And with a defiant roar, he declares that no threat will stop him from bringing Mizuki back home safely. Yaguma simply smirks, completely unfazed by the kid's bold declaration. A strange green energy begins to radiate from his body, a sign of his true power. But Narumitsu stands his ground, ready to face the enraged gang leader. Yaguma's eyes glow with a manic intensity, eager for the fight to begin. With a surge of power, Narumitsu launches himself forward, his fist wreathed in flames. He tells himself to stay calm, convinced that with his newfound strength he cannot lose. The gang leader's eyes widen for just a moment as the attack closes in, but his fiery punch is stopped dead in its tracks by Yaguma's arm. Narumitsu can only stare in disbelief, his full power strike completely neutralized. And before he can react, Yaguma unleashes a vicious counterattack of his own. A brutal elbow strike sends Narumitsu flying back across the room. He can only stare in shock, the taste of blood filling his mouth. Yaguma looms over him, mocking the kid for getting too cocky. He warns Narumitsu not to lump him in with the common thugs he's faced before. A powerful stomp pins our boy's hand to the floor, crushing it under his weight. The gang leader smirks, pleased with this display of overwhelming power. But he's surprised to see Naramitsu still has the guts to glare back at him. With a surge of fiery resolve, our boy declares that he will not lose this fight. Because if he's going to fall, it won't be until Mizuki is safe. He roars that he will beat Yaguma and save Mizuki, no matter what it takes. He unleashes a desperate, fiery punch. But Yaguma meets the attack head-on. The two forces clashing with explosive power, Naramitsu puts every ounce of his will into the strike. But the gang leader just scoffs, completely unimpressed by the display. The two are locked in a brutal stalemate, a clash of orange and green energy. But Yaguma's power proves superior as he lands a vicious knee to the gut. He grabs Naramitsu by the head, taunting him to keep up that defiant attitude. And with a brutal strike, he sends a wave of agony through our boy's entire body. Yaguma looms over him, declaring that the kid's cocky attitude ends now. He calmly picks up a metal bat from the floor, and with a twisted grin promises to hit a home run right through him. Naramitsu knows with sickening certainty that if that bat connects, it's all over. The gang leader brings the weapon down with a surge of green energy. Naramitsu is forced to dodge the relentless, brutal swings. Yaguma taunts him with every attack, his smile widening with each near miss. He screams at Naramitsu, demanding to know why he won't even try to fight back. But our boy grits his teeth, knowing his only chance is to get inside his opponent's guard. He plants his foot, preparing to make his move. He narrowly dodges another brutal swing, the green energy crackling past him. But the relentless assault is clearly taking its toll on our boy. Yaguma leaps into the air, bringing the bat down with the intent to crush him. But Naramitsu ducks under the attack, finally getting inside his opponent's range. He looks up just as the weapon comes crashing down. But the gang leader's swing is just a fraction too slow. Before he can capitalize, a powerful blow sends him stumbling back. Yaguma follows up with another vicious strike, never letting up the pressure. Seeing an opening, Naramitsu rushes in with a fiery punch, convinced he can stop the next swing. But Yaguma just smirks, already winding up for another attack as if the blow meant nothing. Yaguma points out that Naramitsu was far too focused on the bat, and in that moment of distraction, he realizes his fatal mistake. A brutal headbutt connects with devastating force. The blow sends Naramitsu stumbling back, completely disoriented. His consciousness begins to fade as the world goes dark around him. He's consumed by despair, believing someone like him was never meant to win. From across the room, Mizuki can only watch in horror as her rescuer falls. Her eyes are wide with terror, her last hope seemingly crushed. But something inside Naramitsu refuses to give up. He tells himself that this fight is far from over. He plants his foot, remembering that if this were desperate hellfire, and he were truly the legendary Demon King, then until the very moment he fell, Yaguma can only watch, confused by this sudden shift in attitude. Naramitsu's eyes burn with a fiery resolve as he roars that he would never give up. With a surge of power, he unleashes a devastating punch right to Yaguma's face. The impact connects with brutal, undeniable force. The gang leader is sent flying back, completely overpowered by the blow. Naramitsu stands over him, his expression a mix of shock and determination. He looks back, his eyes still burning with the intensity of the fight. With the fight seemingly over, he rushes to the bound and helpless Mizuki. He immediately begins to untie her, promising to get her out of here. She looks up, her blindfold now removed, her eyes filled with relief. The thick ropes finally begin to loosen from her arms. With a grateful smile, she thanks him for saving her life. He confirms her identity, making sure she is Sonohashi Mizuki. Offering his hand, he explains that her father sent him and they need to escape. Mizuki's face lights up with hope as she readily agrees to go with him. But her relief instantly vanishes, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated terror. Because behind Naramitsu, the monstrous Yaguma rises once more, his body radiating a furious green energy. Screaming in pure rage, Yaguma unleashes his full power. But Naramitsu turns to face the charge, his own resolve unwavering. The gang leader throws a punch, his fist wreathed in a furious green energy. But our boy doesn't even flinch as the attack closes in. Instead, he meets the blow with a fiery counterattack of his own. The gang leader is sent crashing to the floor, finally defeated. He stands victorious, declaring that he's won and is taking Mizuki home. From the ground, Yaguma can only ask in disbelief who this kid could possibly be. Naramitsu looks down, ready to give his answer, but suddenly realizes that revealing his true identity would be a very bad idea. He struggles to come up with a good name on the spot, so he decides to go with the one thing he knows for sure. Declaring himself the Demon King of Vermilion Shadow, the name echoes in Yaguma's mind, a final mark of his defeat. Just then, the shutter behind them is forced open with a powerful stomp. Serizawa rushes in, his first concern being for Naramitsu and the hostage. Naramitsu calls out to his leader, confirming that the situation is handled, and with a tired but triumphant smile, he confirms that the mission is complete. He walks away with Mizuki, his first official mission a resounding success. As for the rest of the Yaguma gang, they were left to the discretion of the Senmiya group. It seems the Yaguma gang was so reviled that they'll now be rehabilitated by the Senmiya group. As for what that specifically entails, Naramitsu decides it's probably better not to know. After that, they delivered a recovered Mizuki back to her hospitalized father. It was the first time in his life he'd ever been thanked with such genuine gratitude. To his surprise, Mizuki even asked for his contact info, and he's not sure why. He can't imagine what she would want with the contact information of someone like him. Back in class, his phone suddenly buzzes with a new message. It's from Mizuki, thanking him again and asking about the high school he attends. But his thoughts are interrupted as Momozaki asks if they can walk home together again. But as they walk, Momozaki notices the fresh bandages on his face. She asks if he's all right, but he quickly tries to brush off her concern. He stammers for a moment, trying to find the right words to say. He then apologizes for having to leave her so suddenly the day before. Naramitsu explains that something important came up, recalling his abrupt departure with Serizawa. As they walk, he silently prays that his new boss won't make another appearance today. But Momozaki's curiosity is still piqued, asking about the mysterious person from yesterday. The question puts Naramitsu on edge, unsure of how he should answer. But their conversation is cut short by a familiar voice, revealing Mizuki in a school uniform. Naramitsu can only groan internally, overwhelmed by yet another acquaintance appearing at his school. She offers to treat him to a sweets shop as a way of thanking him for the rescue. With a sparkling smile, she excitedly declares that it's a date. The word sends Naramitsu into a state of pure, unadulterated panic. Momozaki then steps in, her expression turning serious as she looks at the newcomer. Both girls turn to Naramitsu, demanding to know who the other person is. Meanwhile, high above the city at the headquarters of Senmiya Technology, a powerful figure sits alone in the president's office, looking out at the sunset. He muses over the recent report that the Demon King has silenced the Yaguma gang, a group that had been running rampant throughout the entire Kinji town district. And a sinister smile spreads across his face, clearly pleased with this new development. He notes with satisfaction that the experiment seems to be progressing well. Meanwhile, Naramitsu finds himself in an incredibly awkward situation at a local cafe. With a bright smile, Mizuki offers him a spoonful of her parfait. He can only stare, completely caught off guard by the gesture. His mind races, wondering what is even happening at this point. Mizuki seems completely oblivious to his flustered state, as she playfully feeds him the sweet treat. But from across the table, Momozaki watches with a growing sense of irritation. Not to be outdone, she offers him a bite of her own dessert as well. Trapped between the two, he realizes he has no choice but to accept. He reluctantly accepts the bite, his face a mask of pure embarrassment. The sweet treat is delicious, but the tension at the table is anything but. Momozaki then turns to the newcomer with a polite but firm smile, asking if she's also an acquaintance of Naramitsu. Mizuki happily introduces herself as a middle schooler who was saved by him. The word saved leaves both Naramitsu and Momozaki completely stunned. He realizes with a jolt that Momozaki knows nothing about the Yaguma gang, a secret he desperately wants to keep from her. He knows he can't risk involving her in his dangerous new life. The cheerful atmosphere evaporates, replaced by a heavy, unspoken silence. Momozaki asks for more details, curious about how exactly he saved the younger girl. But Naramitsu frantically tries to stop her, insisting she can't reveal anything else. Mizuki just winks, playfully declaring that the details are a secret just between the two of them. The vague answer only makes Momozaki more suspicious as Naramitsu sweats nervously. Desperate to change the subject, he asks Momozaki to introduce herself as well. With a confident smile, she introduces herself as Momozaki Mai. She then grabs Naramitsu's arm, explaining that they're in the same class. And to his complete shock, she declares that they're very close friends. Mizuki takes in this new information, her expression unreadable for a moment. She then reveals that Naramitsu also saved her from delinquents at school. Momozaki's smile is unwavering, her confidence on full display. But Mizuki's shock quickly turns to resolve as she declares she's not losing. A silent war breaks out across the table, with sparks flying between the two girls. Both of them now seem to be competing for his attention, leaving Naramitsu caught in the crossfire. He can only wonder in pure panic why this is happening to him. He has no idea why Momozaki and Mizuki are suddenly acting this way. Later, The three of them find themselves outside an arcade. Their tense reflections stare back at them from the glass of a claw machine. Naramitsu can only look on, still trying to process the situation with Momozaki and Mizuki. After their mysterious argument, the tension between them is thicker than ever. For some reason, the two girls have now become fast friends, and are now happily playing crane games together. Momozaki then turns to Naramitsu, asking him to hold their spot for a moment. She explains that both of them have run out of small change for the machines. He happily agrees, putting on a brave face for them. As he watches them walk away, he's just glad they've become friends. But his quiet moment is interrupted by a voice from behind. He turns around, completely caught off guard by the sudden call. A new group of delinquents approaches, their leader calling him a loner. One of the girls smirks, explaining they're out of cash and asking him to lend them some. Naramitsu can only wait awkwardly as the girls go to get change. But his quiet moment is shattered by a new group of delinquents, who immediately label him a loner. They surround him, mocking his quiet response and making it clear he's their new target. The leader gets right in his face, demanding he hand over his wallet and get lost. But Naramitsu's expression hardens, recognizing this for what it is: simple extortion. The delinquent gets annoyed by his silence, wondering why he's not responding. Naramitsu knows that with his newfound power, he could easily escape this situation. But he can't just abandon Momozaki and Mizuki's spot. His silent defiance only enrages the delinquent leader, who lunges forward with a furious slap, screaming at him for ignoring them. The delinquent explains that unlike Naramitsu, they need money to impress girls. He continues to mock our boy, saying he's never been popular in his life. With a final sneer, he demands that Naramitsu hand over his cash. But his taunts are suddenly cut short by a voice calling out from behind him. The delinquent leader turns, completely annoyed by the sudden interruption. It's Momozaki and Mizuki, and they are not happy with what they see. Momozaki immediately grabs one of Naramitsu's arms, while Mizuki takes the other, pulling him back to safety. They stand protectively in front of him, asking the bullies to let him go. But the leader just smirks, inviting the two girls to hang out with them instead. But Momozaki glares back with a fiery intensity of her own. She fires back, questioning what's so great about people who bully others for being alone. The delinquent leader's face twists in pure rage at her defiance. He lunges forward, furious that she would dare to interfere with his plans. But Naramitsu steps in front of her, his expression calm and unwavering. He effortlessly catches the bully's wrist, stopping the attack dead in its tracks. The delinquent can only stare in shock, his arm held in an unbreakable grip. With a nervous smile, Naramitsu suggests they avoid resorting to violence, explaining that it would be a hassle if the police had to get involved. The other delinquents can only call him pathetic, their leader completely shut down. The other students can only stare, completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. Momozaki quickly grabs his arm, telling him they need to leave before things escalate. Mizuki agrees, insisting that avoiding trouble is far more important than any game. And so, the three of them make a quick exit, leaving the defeated delinquents behind. Once they're a safe distance away, Naramitsu thanks them for stepping in to help. But Mizuki just smiles, convinced that he could have handled the situation on his own. Their conversation is suddenly cut short by a loud, ominous sound echoing through the street. Naramitsu looks around, wondering what could possibly be making that noise. Elsewhere, a man in a red suit seethes with rage, his patience clearly at its end. He stands over a group of defeated students, his body radiating a powerful golden aura. He demands to know why Kishimura and Okisi were so easily defeated. His body radiates a furious green energy as he orders them to find his target. He seethes with rage, vowing revenge on the one who humiliated him, the memory of Serizawa's confident smirk fueling his fury. He pulls out a knife, promising to make his opponent understand that he is the one who is truly superior. Elsewhere, other students watch as Agawa argues with Kishimura and the others. Kishimura tries to reason with him, horrified by the talk of using a weapon. But Okisi has clearly had enough of his leader's unhinged behavior. He declares that he and the others are cutting ties, refusing to follow such a reckless leader. Agawa's fury boils over as he turns on his former underlings. A twisted, manic smile spreads across his face, promising a brutal punishment. With a surge of green energy, he brings his foot down on Okisi with crushing force. His former second-in-command can only endure the humiliating blow. But Okisi screams back in defiance, refusing to be broken so easily. Agawa's grin only widens as he raises his knife, ready to make an example of him. He brings the blade down with a vicious slash, a clear message to the others. The gang leader's eyes glow with pure, sadistic pleasure. Okisi can only cry out in agony, clutching his fresh wound. Agawa declares that those who are inferior to him will never be allowed to escape. The remaining delinquents can only look on in terror, one of them trying to rally the others. They scramble away from the unhinged Agawa, desperate to escape his wrath. The students flee the scene, leaving their former leader to his madness. Agawa can only watch in disbelief, his eyes wide with fury. On the ground, the injured Okishi can only whisper for someone to help him. The panicked students rush right past Narumitsu and the girls, their fear palpable. But Narumitsu doesn't run. He turns to face the danger, his fist clenching. Momozaki and Mizuki call out his name, warning him to stay back. She pleads with him not to go, her eyes filled with genuine concern. But Narumitsu looks back with grim resolve, remembering that he too was once a victim. He remembers the beatings he took, the fights he won, and the brutality he just witnessed, knowing he has no reason to save them. But Agawa's voice cuts through the chaos, promising to make an example out of his former crew. He looms over the terrified students, his eyes glowing with pure, sadistic glee. One of the delinquents tries to stand up to him, but is met with the flash of a cold steel blade. But the attack is stopped dead in its tracks as Narumitsu catches his wrist. Agawa can only stare in disbelief, his rage building as Narumitsu refuses to back down. From the ground, the injured Okishi looks on in complete shock, because Narumitsu roars that he will not abandon anyone to this monster. He stands firm, a fiery aura of resolve radiating from his entire body. And Agawa's shock turns into a twisted smile, welcoming his true target to the fight. Agawa spins the blade in his hand, his confidence growing with every rotation. He smirks, convinced that without Serizawa's help, Narumitsu stands absolutely no chance of beating him. From the ground, Okishi can only scream his name in a desperate warning. But Narumitsu stands his ground, his fists raised and ready for the fight. He remembers the last time he faced this monster, recalling the overwhelming pain and his own helplessness. It's true that back then, he stood no chance against Agawa's power. But after his battle with the Yaguma gang, something has changed within him. And as Agawa lunges forward with the blade, Narumitsu is ready to prove it. A manic grin spreads across Agawa's face as he taunts his opponent. But Narumitsu rushes in, unleashing a powerful uppercut. The blow connects with brutal force, sending Agawa reeling back. He follows up with a devastating kick, his body wreathed in a fiery aura. The gang leader is sent flying through the air, completely overpowered. Narumitsu stands over his defeated foe, declaring that he will not lose again. But Agawa pushes himself up, warning Narumitsu not to get too cocky. His mind flashes back to his humiliating defeat at Serizawa's hands, vowing to gather his forces and eliminate everyone who stood against him. With a final, unhinged threat, he declares he'll even attack the school to get his revenge. Kishimura can only watch in stunned silence. But Narumitsu warns Agawa that if he ever threatens the school again, he will not hesitate for a second, and will crush him without a shred of mercy. He then turns to Kishimura, telling him to take Okishi and get out of here. The former bully can only agree, still processing the impossible turn of events. Narumitsu then tells Momozaki and Mizuki that it's time for them to go as well. As Kishimura carries his injured friend away, Okishi looks back at his savior. He realizes that the boy he once tormented just saved his life, and now he has no idea how he's supposed to face him. But as the chaos settles, his phone suddenly buzzes, breaking the silence. He pulls out the device, his expression hardening as he sees the message. It's a summons from Hizaki, telling him he's needed for another job. And just like that, he's pulled back into the world of Vermilion shadow. Hizaki greets him with a playful smile, announcing his arrival. He nervously asks if this is another job, his eyes darting around the room. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife. Serizawa sits in silence, his posture radiating an unnerving intensity. Narumitsu can't help but wonder what's going on with his leader. He can't shake the feeling that Serizawa is furious about something. Hizaki tries to reassure him, explaining that Serizawa's mood isn't his fault. But Narumitsu can only ask what could have possibly happened. Ryun then speaks up, insisting that they explain the situation to their new recruit. Serizawa finally speaks, revealing that since yesterday, their members and collaborators have been under constant attack. Even their non-combat personnel were targeted, beaten so badly that some are still unconscious. He explains that they know the name of their opponent, a semi-criminal organization with a menacing skull emblem, a group that calls themselves the Skull Phantom, and he vows that he will never forgive them for harming his defenseless comrades. He declares that they will drive Skull Phantom to complete and utter destruction. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure with a cane remarks on the rumors he's heard about VS. He stands over his defeated foes, mocking them for being nothing but weaklings. He admits that he's a little disappointed by the lack of a real challenge, but as long as his boss is satisfied, he supposes it's all fine. This is Crazy Kane, one of the key figures in the Skull Phantom organization. He raises his weapon, declaring that the hunt for Vermilion Shadow is far from over as he leaves a trail of bodies in his wake. A full week passes in the blink of an eye, and the search for Skull Phantom has officially begun. Vermilion Shadow deploys its members and collaborators across the city. But despite their numbers, they've found no useful information on their new enemy. In fact, 2 more of their own have been brutally taken down by the mysterious group. Even Naramitsu is forced to search for leads after school, the constant pressure wearing him down. But his thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a familiar voice calling out to him. He turns to find Kishimura, who confronts him with a strange accusation. Naramitsu realizes that for the past few days, he's felt a constant presence. Noticing his former bully watching him from the corners of the school, it seems Kishimura has been following his every move with a strange intensity. And now the 2 of them stand face to face, the tension thick with unspoken questions. With a heavy sigh, Kishimura finally explains why he's been following him. He admits that Naramitsu saved both him and Okise from Agawa's unhinged attack. And while he still can't comprehend how Naramitsu suddenly got so strong, he knows that without his help, neither of them would have made it out safely. Naramitsu can only listen as his former bully insists that he can't just let this go. He declares that he has to repay the debt for being saved, even to the one he used to torment. Flustered, Naramitsu tries to brush it off, insisting he wasn't looking for thanks. But Kishimura is already thinking ahead, warning that Agawa could strike again at any moment. He clenches his fist, vowing that if Naramitsu is attacked, he will fight with resolve too. And in a shocking declaration, the former bully promises to be his shield. Naramitsu can only stare, completely caught off guard by the declaration. Kishimura explains that he's been following him around to make sure he's safe. But Naramitsu's expression hardens as he understands the situation, asking his new self-appointed bodyguard not to follow him into the bathroom. He explains that he walked to a distant restroom on purpose, but Kishimura followed him anyway. The former bully insists that Agawa's men could be waiting anywhere, even here. The 2 of them stand in an awkward silence outside the restroom door. But as Naramitsu enters, Kishimura follows close behind, refusing to leave his side. Suddenly, Kishimura's eyes widen as he realizes they're not alone. Inside, they find another group of students cornering a helpless victim, a scene all too familiar to Naramitsu. The lead bully turns, annoyed by the sudden appearance of Naramitsu and Kishimura. On the floor, the victim can only look up, his face bruised and defeated. Kishimura's expression hardens, clearly angered by the familiar scene. But Naramitsu is frozen, a wave of recognition washing over him. He sees the helpless student on the ground, and realizes he's looking at a reflection of his own past, a painful memory of when he was the one being tormented, unable to resist. And in that moment, he knows he has to step in and help. He places a hand on Kishimura's shoulder, stopping him from moving first. With a new resolve, Naramitsu steps forward to handle this himself. The lead bully screams at him to stay out of it, completely enraged by the interference. But Naramitsu is faster, landing a vicious backhand that sends the bully reeling. He grabs the stunned delinquent by the collar, a strange blue aura flaring around him. He calmly explains that since they don't recognize him, they must be new punks who aren't under Okishi's crew. Turning to Kishimura, he tells his new bodyguard to watch closely, because he's about to show him just how much he's changed. The remaining bullies can only stare in disbelief and rage. With a furious scream, they charge forward to attack. But Naramitsu meets them with a powerful punch, his movements fluid and precise. He lands another devastating blow, taking down the second bully with ease. He stands over the last of them, his hand glowing with a strange new power. In a matter of seconds, the entire group of bullies is left defeated on the floor. A confident smirk spreads across his face, a look he's never worn before. And with one final, devastating punch, the fight is officially over. He explains that all the truly strong delinquents in the school have already been recruited by Okishi's crew, so there was never any chance he would lose to a group of weak first years. With the threat neutralized, he helps the student he just saved back to his feet. He then turns to a completely stunned Kishimura, eager to hear his thoughts. With a proud smile, he asks if he can finally see how much he's changed. Kishimura can only stare in awe, his mind struggling to process what he just saw. Back at headquarters, Serizawa questions the new plan to use a decoy. Hizaki explains that while risky, it's their best chance to gather intel on the enemy. She volunteers to pretend to be a weak collaborator, in order to draw out the hunters from Skull Phantom. She admits she's tired of being on the defensive all the time. and with a confident smile, she declares it's time for Vermilion Shadow to counterattack. The next day, Naramitsu walks with Kishimura and the student he just saved. The rescued boy is overjoyed, expressing his gratitude for them stopping the bullying. He turns to Kishimura, thanking him for his help in the situation. But Kishimura insists he doesn't need thanks, explaining that he stepped in on his own. The rescued student then turns to him with a bright smile, asking if he's okay. This first year, Nagatani Yutaka seems genuinely concerned for his new protector. He insists that he's fine, all thanks to the two of them stepping in to help. But his relief fades as he admits he's also been targeted by other bullies. He begins to tear up, convinced that the torment will just continue. He apologizes for being a burden, his hope completely crushed by the situation. But Naramitsu offers a solution, telling Nagatani to stick with him for a while. Kishimura begins to explain that all the school's delinquents are led by Okise, but since Narumitsu saved Okise, he's now an untouchable figure no one will dare to cross. Nagatani is completely stunned by this revelation. Kishimura explains that Okise is trying to run things differently now, and even gave a direct order for everyone to stay away from Narumitsu. He assures Nagatani that as long as he's with Narumitsu, he'll be safe from most bullies. But Nagatani hesitates, worried that he'll just be a burden to his new protector. Naramitsu just smiles, insisting he doesn't mind at all and inviting him to hang out. The genuine kindness brings Nagatani to tears, overjoyed by the offer. As they walk, Naramitsu discovers they both play desperate hellfire, eagerly suggesting they team up. But when he asks Kishimura, the former bully just scoffs at the idea of playing games at their age. Later that day, Naramitsu arrives at the Vermilion Shadow headquarters, apologizing for his tardiness. He finds Hizaki and Ryun waiting for him, the former in a completely new outfit. With a playful smile, she asks what he thinks of her new older sister look. Naramitsu can only stammer out that he thinks she looks cute, completely flustered. She teases him for his awkward response, telling the Demon King he'll get better with practice. But her expression quickly turns serious as she asks if he understands today's mission. Naramitsu recalls the plan to use Hizaki as bait to lure out their new enemies. She confirms that she changed her appearance specifically for this operation. She won't be acting as a VS executive, but as a weak and vulnerable collaborator. Her eyes glow with a pink aura, ready to reel in the members of Skull Phantom. Ryan explains that they've already spread word of her new look throughout the underworld. She'll walk through the city, spreading fake information to draw them out. Meanwhile, Ryun and Narumitsu will follow her from the shadows, and when the hunter from Skull Phantom appears, they'll take them down together. Narumitsu and Ryun stand ready, their part in the dangerous plan now set. The operation begins as Hizaki walks through a bustling city square, playing her part. She waves to another collaborator, making the act look as convincing as possible. From a distance, Ryan watches her every move, his expression unreadable. Naramitsu also keeps a close watch, his focus entirely on the mission. Hizaki waves goodbye to the collaborator, continuing her slow walk through the crowd. And from behind, Narumitsu and Ryun follow, their eyes fixed on the bait. The operation begins with Narumitsu and Ryun tailing Hizaki from a safe distance. The story they've spread is that an important transaction took place earlier. A fake scenario where a collaborator is delivering a package to a VS executive. Ryun is confident they'll fall for it, having made the information leak seem completely natural. He knows Skull Phantom is feeling arrogant after their recent victories, a carelessness they plan to exploit. Hizaki continues her walk, playing the part of an unsuspecting target perfectly. Her expression is calm and composed, hiding the dangerous truth of her mission. But her eyes narrow as she spots a group of hooded figures moving through the crowd, their skull emblems unmistakable. She feigns ignorance, turning down a more secluded side street. And just as planned, the members of Skull Phantom follow her into the trap. The hooded figures follow her into the dark alley, their trap now set. One of them grabs her arm, believing they've cornered a helpless victim. Just as Narumitsu and Ryun rush in to complete the ambush, they find the gang waiting for them. But Hizaki spins around, her vulnerable act completely vanishing. She reveals her weapon, declaring that Skull Phantom has fallen right into their trap. The leader, however, seems completely unimpressed, noting there are only 3 of them. He scoffs at the idea that Narumitsu and Ryun are supposed to be some kind of elite team. With a confident smirk, he acknowledges that they know this is an ambush, but reveals they walked into it on purpose, his eye glowing with a strange blue energy. The sudden twist leaves Narumitsu completely stunned, realizing their plan has just been flipped on its head. The alley is suddenly flooded with even more members of Skull Phantom. But Hizaki stands her ground, her weapon ready and her expression calm. Naramitsu realizes with a jolt that they're the ones who have been caught. The leader smirks, admitting he was getting bored hunting down their weaker members. But now he's found a real fight, and his crew grins with sadistic anticipation. With a single command, he orders his men to attack. The entire gang rushes forward in a coordinated assault. Hizaki, Ryun, and Naramitsu are completely surrounded by the enemy. Naramitsu knows that even with his powerful allies, the sheer number of enemies is a serious problem. But from the shadows, Ryun's eyes begin to glow, his power finally awakening. With a surge of blue energy, Ryun unleashes a powerful strike, clearing a path through the attackers. Naramitsu can only watch as his allies begin to dismantle the enemy forces with ease. Hizaki joins the fray, her pink aura flaring as she moves with blinding speed. The Skull Phantom leader is completely stunned by this sudden display of power. One of his men lunges at Hizaki, but she's already prepared for the attack. She decides that at this point, there's no reason to hold back any longer. And with a devastating kick, she sends the attacker crashing to the ground. Naramitsu is amazed, realizing the enemies are going down in an instant. He finally understands the true strength of the VS executives, Hizaki and Ryun. The remaining Skull Phantom members can only stare in disbelief, realizing these guys are on a completely different level. The Skull Phantom leader realizes these three are on a completely different level from the other VS members they've hunted. Inspired by his allies, Naramitsu resolves to do his best so he can be of some help to them. His eyes burn with a new determination as he clenches his fist, ready to join the fight. He unleashes a powerful punch of his own, sending one of the attackers flying. Moving with a newfound confidence, he takes down another enemy in a blur of motion. Another devastating blow connects, his eyes glowing with the intensity of the battle. He stands over his fallen foe, a fiery aura radiating from his entire body. Ryun looks on, offering a rare bit of praise for the kid's performance. But Naramitsu just smiles, feeling like he's still not contributing much compared to his powerful allies. But their victory is cut short as a new figure steps over the defeated bodies, his cane tapping ominously on the pavement. The man with the cane remarks that his underlings were clearly not enough to handle them. He taps his weapon on the ground, a strange red energy crackling from the tip. With a confident smirk, he decides there's no other choice, and declares that he will be their opponent now. Hizaki immediately rushes forward to attack, her pink aura flaring to life, but he effortlessly blocks her strike with his cane, deflecting a bullet in the process. He even taunts her for the failed attack, a smug look on his face. But just as he's distracted, Ryun appears from behind, ready to strike. He brings his fists down with a surge of blue energy, aiming to crush him. The Skull Phantom executive just smirks, impressed by how close they came. Naramitsu can only watch in shock, realizing he brushed off both of their attacks with ease. Even Ryun has to admit that this new opponent is on a completely different level. The man with the cane just smiles, deciding it's time for a proper introduction. He reveals his name is Crazy Kane, the head of Skull Phantom's combat division. With a chilling grin, he offers a mock-polite greeting to his new opponents. Ryun's expression hardens, the name clearly ringing a bell. He realizes with a jolt that he's heard that name somewhere before. He recalls a story about a vicious delinquent gang that used to run rampant, led by a man with that very same nickname. Crazy Kane seems impressed that the VS executive knows his history. He confirms the story with a smirk, admitting that those were his glory days. But Hizaki refuses to be intimidated, planting her foot to begin the assault. She leaps into the air, calling for Ryun to coordinate their attack. Ryun follows her lead, his eyes glowing as he unleashes a powerful strike. But Crazy Kane simply watches her approach, completely unimpressed by the display. He smirks, asking them to at least let him enjoy the fight for a little while. With a surge of green energy, he effortlessly blocks her kick with his cane. The force of the blow sends a shockwave of pain through Hizaki's entire body, but Ryun is already there, his fist crackling with blue energy as he closes in. Crazy Kane's eyes glow with a chilling confidence, ready for the next move. And with a single swing of his cane, he sends the powerful executive crashing to the ground. Ryun can only grit his teeth, completely overpowered by the Skull Phantom executive. Naramitsu calls out in horror as both Hizaki and Ryun are taken down. But a new mysterious figure with a scythe suddenly appears, having dispatched the remaining grunts. Hizaki is left unconscious on the ground, her part in the fight now over. Ryun is in a similar state, the two powerful executives completely defeated. Naramitsu can only stare in shock, the last one standing against this new monster. Crazy Kane just smirks, asking why the kid isn't even trying to attack him. He then decides to ask Naramitsu a question instead of continuing the fight. He wants to know if Naramitsu has heard of a person called the Demon King, because finding that person, he reveals, is his true objective. He reveals that hunting down the Demon King is the true purpose of this entire operation. The revelation hits Naramitsu like a physical blow, his mind reeling. He realizes this entire war was started just to find him. But Crazy Kane notices the look on his face, realizing the kid knows something. He steps on the unconscious Ryun, his attention now fully on Naramitsu. Grabbing him by the collar, he demands to know what he knows about the Demon King. And Naramitsu can only think of how everyone in Vermilion Shadow got hurt. All because this new enemy was hunting for him. The image of Hizaki's defeated face flashes through his mind, and the sight of Ryun, beaten and broken on the ground. He wonders if revealing his identity will finally stop them from hunting his friends. The fear of what they'll do to him is overwhelming. But if it means saving everyone else, he's ready to make the sacrifice. With his resolve hardened, he prepares to confess that he is the Demon King. But before he can speak, Ryun's voice cuts through the silence from the ground. The executive points out that Crazy Kane is asking about the Demon King, not Naramitsu. He struggles to his feet, telling Naramitsu to listen very carefully. Because Vermilion Shadow will never ever sell out one of its own comrades. He warns Naramitsu that if he reveals the truth, they will never forgive him. Even in defeat, Ryun's loyalty to his allies is absolute. But the mysterious scythe wielder steps in, annoyed that Ryun interrupted just as Naramitsu was about to talk. With a surge of green energy, they bring their weapon down on the executive, furious at his interference. Naramitsu can only scream his comrade's name in pure, unadulterated horror. The scythe wielder looks down on the fallen executive, telling Naramitsu he should feel bad for him. They mock Ryun's sacrifice, pointing out that he was silenced for his loyalty. Naramitsu is consumed by guilt, realizing that if he had just revealed himself sooner, then Ryun wouldn't have had to suffer this final, brutal blow. But even so, Ryun chose to warn him, risking his own life to protect a comrade. He understands now that Ryun would never allow him to sacrifice himself just to save the group. The scythe wielder smirks, sensing the shift in his resolve and asking if he's ready to fight. With a surge of fiery resolve, he vows to take this man down with everything he's got. Crazy Kane can only look on, a flicker of surprise on his face. Naramitsu's fist connects with a powerful fiery impact. The Skull Phantom executive is stunned by the sudden increase in pressure from the kid, but his shock quickly turns into a twisted, amused laugh. He declares that this is finally getting fun as he unleashes a powerful swing of his own. Naramitsu analyzes the attack, realizing his opponent's motion is like a thrust with a weapon. It's a strike with far more reach than a simple fist, an attack that would easily overwhelm anyone used to regular fistfights. But in the world of VR games, he's fought countless enemies with long spears, so he knows that an attack like this is something he can definitely dodge. But his opponent's confident smirk suggests he's not just any ordinary foe. The massive blade comes swinging down with incredible speed. But Naramitsu ducks under the attack just as he predicted. But the scythe wielder is far faster than he anticipated. He realizes this man is on a completely different level than he expected. From the ground, the defeated Ryun can only watch the battle unfold. He notes the perfect efficiency in the Demon King's movements. It's clear that Naramitsu is steadily mastering the power given to him by the Senmiya group. And he realizes that at this rate, the kid might one day surpass them all, and maybe even reach a level on par with Serizawa himself. Back in the fight, Naramitsu dodges another sweeping attack from the scythe wielder. He sees his opening, the perfect moment to strike back, and with a fiery uppercut, he lands a direct hit on his opponent's jaw. But the scythe wielder just smirks, seemingly unfazed by the powerful blow. Naramitsu's resolve only hardens, his focus absolute. He unleashes another devastating strike, sending his foe crashing to the ground. The force of the blow sends the Skull Phantom executive plummeting down. Naramitsu stands over him, declaring, "This is the price for laying a hand on everyone in VS." He tells the defeated executive to reflect on that while he's down for the count. But his battle focus quickly shifts to concern for his fallen allies. He rushes over to Hizaki and Ryun, calling out their names in a panic. Ryun sits up, groaning that he's fine, but annoyed that he let his guard down. Naramitsu is just relieved they're both conscious, though clearly too hurt to stand. But Hizaki points out that Crazy Kane is already on the ground, completely defeated. Naramitsu sheepishly admits that he was the one who took him down. Hizaki is completely blown away, praising him for already reaching executive-level strength. He then asks what they should do with all the defeated Skull Phantom members. Ryun notes that there is still a lot they don't know about their new enemy. But Hizaki looks on with a determined smirk, realizing they can get plenty of information out of their new prisoners. Naramitsu looks on, a little unsettled by the implications of their next move.